of the very real realities of getting older is, of course, our changing appearance. Some of us resist those changes, some don't. Whatever your response, our philosophy at the Aging Project is you do you. But today's guest, Phoebe Stuart, will get you thinking about your relationship with your external appearance and perhaps what beauty really means. Phoebe is a mum, she's a lawyer, she's a writer, an avid cook, and she is also someone who, at just 18, experienced a devastating and near-fatal illness that resulted in the loss of her legs below the knee, her left hand at the wrist, and much of her vision. I am delighted to be talking with Phoebe today. Thank you so much for joining us, Phoebe. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me, Shelley.
Can I begin with a quote from you? Everything that is valuable and beautiful about a human being has nothing to do with your appearance. That, Phoebe Stuart, without even knowing you, gives us all a sense of what a remarkable woman you are. And for so many reasons, I hope that we tell your story the way that you would like it to be told, and the messages that you would like people to hear. So perhaps we kick off with Phoebe's story.
Well, I guess, that quote is definitely the worldview of someone who comes to a recorded podcast with a bandage on their face, because I just know in my heart that, of course, and everyone knows what is most wonderful about people is really what is on the inside. But I certainly learned that through lived experience when I was 18 years old. I was at university, undertaking my first year of study. I'd just come back from a year overseas, and I was just a pretty ordinary, happy-go-lucky, hockey-playing college student. Please don't tell my children, but my nickname was Blotto, so that can give you an insight into what I was up to on the weekends. But during my first swap back, I came down with this sort of mystery illness, and I went to the GP and he prescribed me antibiotics, and within a few days I just deteriorated rapidly. My skin and eyes and lungs and mouth began to blister and burn as if I'd been in a fire, and my college friends drove me to the emergency department, and I very quickly slipped into a coma and was admitted to the ICU, where I spent about 5 weeks in that coma. I was, covered in burns. My brain was swelling. My lungs kept having repeated bouts of pneumonia. My eyelids were actually sewn shut to harness the burns that were happening to my corneas. I had tubes. I had a central line. I had a tracheostomy to help me breathe. I had a nasogastric tube to help me feed. I was pretty much as close to death and as sick as a person could get. And then my hands and feet began to turn blue and then black, and my limbs were essentially perishing. And so as a last-ditch attempt, the intensive care doctors suggested amputating the flesh that was now sort of poisoning the rest of me. So my parents bravely signed the consent forms on my behalf, and I'm told that in the operating theatre, the medical staff were quietly crying as they saw my limbs being removed forever. But fortunately, the amputative surgery really saved me, and that's when I started to turn a corner and it looked as though I might live. But for me, I was a young college student who walked into the emergency department as one body, and then I woke up to this very new reality of having no legs below the knee, a missing left hand, and much of my vision sort of gone.
It is a harrowing story for anyone, and to retell it again, thank you for your bravery. I'm sure 20 years on, it doesn't make it any easier to relive those moments. When you did wake up and obviously saw bandages and bits missing, what was the first thought that crossed your mind?
I think it took me a while to sort of orientate to what had happened. So it wasn't like a one big reveal. It was a slow sort of comprehension. And I think one thing that I just really bumped up against was how irreversible my injuries were. They just seemed so permanent. Well, they are, but it was very hard to get my head around. And I had just deep, deep grief and sadness. And I think that was definitely part of my healing, was to really acknowledge and feel that sadness. It was like a monsoon of just tidal wave of emotion and sadness. And I think once I started being allowed visitors, I turned another corner, because I realized that despite my injured shell, I was still entirely Phoebe on the inside. And that was just so profound and powerful to realize that, this illness had taken so much, but this part of me that is like my true Phoebe-ness was just untouchable and inextinguishable. And that's what really got me through those early days. And even today, it's the one thing we can all count on, is our spirit and essence being unharmed by life's, gravest challenges.
And I read that it was a friend of yours, Mum, who said that. I can imagine this would have been terribly distressing for your girlfriends who were sort of responsible for your well-being living in college. And what did one of the mums say to her daughter about what you'd gone through?
Yeah, my friend Carly, she sent me like cards every day, and I just had this amazing community around me. And Carly came to visit one day and said how she'd been crying to her mum, saying just everything has changed and it's so sad. And her mum had just said, Phoebes will be back up to her old tricks before too long. Oh. And when she said that, it just hit me. I was like, yeah, I will be, and I can be. And I was so deeply determined that although this illness had taken so much and stripped my life bare, I was not going to let it take everything. I was determined to not let it cause more devastation beyond that hospital room. I was determined to ensure that I held on to who I was. And, years later, I heard that Viktor Frankl quote about how everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, the ability to choose one's own way. And I think when everything is taken, that really is the most profound thing that we can do, and the most powerful thing. Mm-hmm. And you can choose your attitude and live from that real essence of Phoebe-ness or Shelley-ness, mm-hmm. wherever you are, whether it's on an operating table or, having a conversation on a podcast. Like, that is the one thing we can control. And that's what's really, guided me through the toughest times in my life.
So I don't want to ask who was the Phoebe before the illness, because that obviously is very much who you are. Tell us about Blotto, as Phoebe as an 18-year-old or a 15-year-old through to 18. What is it about your character that you think made you able at that moment to say, you know what, I'm not going to let this destroy me?
I don't know. I think it was a bit of spunkiness, a bit of humour. I think, the challenges in our life have this ability to just reveal more and more of who we are. And I think I was always like courageous, resilient, determined, generous and thoughtful, all those sort of higher qualities that we all aspire to. They're inside all of us. But for some reason, when we bump up against suffering, they get more and more distilled, and they come to the forefront of our lives, because it's the only way we can get through, and they're the most powerful things to rely on.
So you think we've all got that in us anyway?
Definitely.
It's not actually the adversity that we suddenly inherit those qualities. We can find them within us without having to go through the pain and the suffering and that, that affirmation moment.
Mm-hmm. I do. And I think, unfortunately, suffering is one of the best ways to reveal them to us. And I think that's sort of part of life, is drawing those lessons and that meaning from our suffering to ensure that it's not in vain, and we do grow internally and have a stronger sense of character as we emerge from our hard times.
I guess a lot of people who do go through tough times can often put it behind them and move forward. For you, there are daily reminders every day of that. is that almost like a wake-up call every morning, or do you not think about your injuries anymore? Obviously, the eye patch today, as you said, hey, I'm showing up, I'm here, I'm on a podcast and I'm chatting. But does that keep you in that positive frame of mind every day that, we say wake up and say the 5 things that you're grateful for this morning? Obviously, that means a lot more to you.
I think it does put everything into perspective. It helps me, to live in that place of taking the high road and letting petty stuff go, because I do have this big, huge experience that happened to me, and these quite, being disabled can be stressful, painful, laborious, and it's just this constant reminder of I wasn't supposed to be here at all. I am truly grateful. I know gratitude is a bit overused these days, but I am so grateful to have had this extra time and to have rebuilt a life that for so many days, weeks, I was not at all supposed to have. So I think it is this constant sort of reminder in the background of what truly matters in a life, which is a gift, as much as it is also, this sad thing that I carry with me as well.
You've got a heck of a lot of spunk, Phoebe, and just reading about not the grief that you gave the hospital staff, but some of the stories about you when you were in hospital. And again, as an 18-year-old, I can only imagine the hospital staff would have loved having you around, and you're obviously there for quite some time. Can you run us through some of the funny things that you did in that time that obviously kept your spirits up as well, but again, made everyone around you I guess, relax and feel like they shouldn't be feeling sorry for you because you were getting on with business?
Yes, I just loathe people feeling sorry for me. So I definitely didn't lead with that sort of victim mentality. But yeah, for much of my rehab, I was in a geriatric assistance ward, and I had no hair and was skeletal and, covered in red burns. And so, the elderly patients would walk past me and say, "Morning, son." And I was just like, I'm not fraternizing with any of these old people. As much as I cherish and respect elderly people, they were on a different path to me. I was like, I'm here to get out and get back to things. I'm not going to be brought down with this elderly vibe. So, yeah, I was certainly just an 18-year-old college student doing her best in a very foreign environment. And I think that's what did help me, because I brought myself and my personality to, all the physio and all the, hospital appointments. And it made, the therapists and medical staff get on my side. And it ultimately led to a happier day and a better outcome.
Well, things like not wanting to eat with the geriatrics and getting takeaway in the hospital most nights, asking the nurses to bring in some vodka to put in your drip. This is a girl I really want to hang out with.
I know. Well, she was doing her best as a young thing on a ward.
Oh, I think my favourite was pretending you're asleep when your school chaplain would come to visit, so you didn't have to talk to him.
I know.
Oh, all I can say is God bless.
His heart was in the right place, but yeah, he didn't have much that I was finding useful in his visitation, so it was a bit cheeky.
Oh, I can't believe I'm laughing, but you are hilarious. So out of hospital, you're obviously going to need some serious assistance, but it was back to uni for you?
Yes, within 18 months, I was back living in a share house near uni with 5 friends. I was making my way around uni now, trying to navigate the world with lower vision and with, slightly more difficulty walking. But I've certainly exceeded a lot of the limitations that were put on me during that recovery period. I think just through sheer determination, luck, and yeah, I managed to complete my arts law and went on to be admitted as a solicitor, and met my husband Ben and had 2 marvellous little boys, and certainly have rebuilt a full and rich and meaningful life.
So it is, your cup is full, Phoebe.
Indeed.
A quick you must try it pause. We have been busy putting together gift ideas to make the gift giving season easy. So if you're buying for teachers, your bestie, your mum, or the teenagers in your life, even your partner, we have some fabulous ideas. Think beautiful perfumes, body oils, organic teas, candles, exfoliants, and so much more. Go check out our gifts page on youmusttryit.com for more. Now, back to the show. I know a lot of our listeners have their own challenges. It may be their own life transition. We talk a lot about menopause and whether that's the evil or whether that's this sort of embracing your inner power that we have in our second half of life, whether it's divorce, whether it's new careers, the loss of a loved one, those testing times that we need the ability to skill and to navigate. How did you get into that mindset? Because I know, you can have those up days, but you probably, and I'm sure like all of us, still have the days where you just can't or think you can't do it. How did you put yourself, or how do you stay in that positive mindset?
I think it's definitely that piece about determination to not let this illness take more than it already has. I think it's also being real about our emotions. I think, I certainly grew up in a time where we were supposed to be happy, clappy all the time, and negative emotions were sort of seen as negative. And I think as I've matured, I've realized we just need to process sadness and grief and frustration, and eventually it just is expressed and moved through us. And if we can do it without impacting those around us, that is a plus.
But those around you should be on the journey with you at the same time. Do you feel like it's sometimes necessary to do that processing by yourself, or do you feel like you have to share it with the ones closest to you so they understand where you are, or is it a private, personal thing?
Historically, I have not shared it. I have certainly kept it to myself. I think I'm getting better at sharing it, and that does lessen the burden when you have a community who understands and makes space for the fact that, life is hard and everyone comes up against struggles. I know I'm not unique in going through hard days. And then also being that for other people and having that compassion for those around you. I mean, it's really a feedback loop, which helps us all. But I think, I think aging and going through difficult things is all part of life, and, it just can't be avoided. And I think it does have the ability to help us grow internally and draw down on what is really most important and most meaningful to us. So I think if we can draw the meaning and gifts from tough times, whether it's menopause or divorce or whatever it might be, that's really what we're all here to do.
I think it's tough that we don't often use the right language to speak to people when they are going through hard times, whether it's something we've just lost in our culture. As you say, an 18-year-old with their life ahead of them shouldn't ever experience anything like this, but pain doesn't discriminate, and illnesses, injuries, accidents, they don't discriminate. But I think we're really poor at expressing how to communicate with people who are going through tough times. What are some of the worst things that people could say when you're in that situation? Or what do you wish people had said to you back then and even now? As you say, you're not looking for pity or people to look upon you any differently, but how is best for us to communicate that we wish life hadn't delivered that to you?
I think it's just being as genuine as we can. I think listening is really important, and holding that space and time for someone to really express what they're going through without us trying to quickly fix it or look for that silver lining, because we'll all find it when we're ready. I think if you asked my mum, she would say that I get cranky when she immediately says, but when I'm saying, this is hard, she'll say, but this, that, or the other. And It's like, just let me get it out before you butt me. But again, I think I say the wrong thing all the time. You know, we're all human, and I think we need to be as forgiving and compassionate as we can with ourselves and with people who are going through tough times. And I think I've definitely noticed a narrative of people who have gone through something really difficult or who might have a disability, where the main focus of what they talk about is, this crazy thing was said to me, this person was insensitive. And at the end of the day, I mean, we can't take on that, you know, what other people are going to say. We can only be responsible for how we feel about what's happening to us, and try and connect on a level to meet whoever is with us and where they're at. And so, yeah, I just try and rise above. I mean, I've been in a lot of taxi cabs with a lot of people, a lot of drivers who've said some weird stuff to me, but, you know, it's not really that important.
Just got to shake it off.
That's it. Taylor Swift.
Yeah, look, you know, her and Elsa might be the two greatest philosophers of all time.
100%.
Before we started recording, you said you'd done your meditation today, you were feeling grounded. What is your daily ritual or routine like?
I definitely am into meditation. I've been a pretty consistent meditator since my children were born, because I just found it really hard to not get completely sucked into every emotion that they were experiencing, because they just feel so close to me. But I'm sure you know what a 2-year-old is like with their ups and downs. And so I really turned to meditation to try and keep my sort of internal weather system pretty steady, which I think helps. But, you know, some days it doesn't. And, yeah, so I think, you know, we all know what we're supposed to do. I'm pretty disciplined at, you know, exercising, meditating, you know, eating relatively well, just because I don't want to go to the doctor's office and have any doubt that I didn't do everything I could on my part. And you know, if I'm having a bad prognosis, I know it's, you know, outside of my control, and that's a better place for me to be in than thinking, you know, feeling guilty or frustrated that I could have done more.
And how is your body now? You've never had a reoccurrence. This illness has never raised its head again. Fit?
Fighting fit internally. My eyes, from the scarring, require a little bit of medical assistance, and I've had some ups and downs, but and I've had some recent surgical complications, but basically fighting fit and ready to turn 40 in December.
Oh, so you're aging well, like the rest of us.
That's what we're here on this project for, Shelley.
Yeah, well, bring it on. I'm loving every minute of it. You're an avid reader. What are some of the titles that you've come across, some books that have had a real impact on you?
I think the most powerful books for me have been memoirs. I'm thinking of Alok Vaid-Menon's book, Chanel Miller, Bruce Buchani, the Kurdish-Iranian journalist who wrote his memoir from Manas Detention Center. I think memoirs that don't tell you what to do, like here's a 5-point plan for a difficult time, but instead share a story, show how, you know, people can remain so steadfastly themselves and true to themselves and what they believe in the most unfathomable highs and lows. I think those stories have the ability to sort of remind us how powerful we all are, and how, and yeah, just help us to trust our own inner wisdom and our own inner Phoebe-ness and Shelley-ness, to continue on and persevere. And yeah, so I think memoirs are probably my favourite.
Are you writing your own, Phoebe? And if you're not, why not?
Look, I have definitely got a bit of a thought to write one, but it's difficult to dig everything up, first of all. And second of all, I would want to write a book that didn't bring anyone down. I don't want to just be like, here's a big sad story that happened to me. So I think once I get that idea of how to tell it in a way that is nurturing and uplifting, I'll send you a manuscript.
Yes, please do. Please do. Well, you have written a little bit in your time, and a lot of that is obviously coping mechanisms, but also your own set of beauty ideals. I've got them written here, but would you like to share them with us, or would you like me to read them out?
I believe there is beauty in generosity, self-awareness, and humour. I believe there is beauty in not being too obsessed with ourselves and our own complaints. I believe there is beauty in asking good questions and having meaningful conversations. I believe there is beauty in realising that ageing is a privilege and liking who you are is cool. I believe there is beauty in being interested and interesting. I believe there is beauty in smiling like you mean it and not being too laboriously coiffed and groomed. I believe there is beauty in taking time to learn about other people's struggles and caring about things outside ourselves. I believe there is beauty in continuing on in the face of great pain. And I believe our truest beauty comes from being like nobody else out there, but our own unique, complicated, and precious selves.
Phoebe, you are all of those. Yes, yes, yes to all of those. I'd love to say you are a North Star for all of us on this topic of just not just being true to ourselves, but actually just loving ourselves the way we are. That's it. And, having kids, that's all they get, right? There they are. That's it. And you've got to make the most of what you got. And I really
Absolutely.
do appreciate you helping us to think a little bit more deeply about what that actually means to all of us. It's going to be a day of reflection, I think, and not in the mirror, just in a reflection for all of us today. Where can people hear you? Do you do speaking gigs? Would you like to stand up in front of a crowd and deliver these messages more? Is a keynote something that you'd love to do, or where can people actually connect with you?
I do a little bit of speaking. It's hard to, to tell my story every single day. So, and I am a mum and a lawyer as other hustles. So, but I do a little bit of writing and sharing of my experiences and what I'm reading on my Instagram, which, people may or may not be Instagram fans, but that's where I do put out a little bit of what's going on inside me. And otherwise, I'm always happy to hear from anyone.
Not just a North Star, but a shining light. Phoebe, you are an extraordinary human. Thank you so much for today's chat.
Shelley, that's so lovely. Thank you so much for having me.
Some people's life story can impact you, and today's conversation is one of those. Phoebe is the definition of everything that is beautiful, and it's a reminder that beauty is indeed an inside-out job. Our shell, as Phoebe puts it, is just that. So, as it changes over time and with age, let's remember we will always be beautiful. I'd like to put Phoebe's beauty ideas on the fridge for my kids and for me. There were so many pearls of wisdom there. You can connect with Phoebe at any time on Instagram at Phoebesgram. That's at PhoebesGram. This woman shares the best book recommendations. As always, if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it. Talk to you again next week. I'm Shelley Craft. This is the Aging Project off season. See you soon.